You are watching the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. The Humanities 101 Foundation welcomes you.
Hello, Nacho Knots. Welcome back to the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. I am Dr. Adam Dutch Hazlett, and this is Humanities 101. And, Nacho Knots, this coming weekend is Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S., and that means that we're approaching one of the great American seasonal rituals, the unofficial start of summer. And every year we do the exact same thing. We emerge cautiously from the winter like confused raccoons squinting into the sunlight. We uncover lawn furniture that has spent 6 months marinating under tarps. We buy hot dogs, citronella candles, and enough buns to feed a minor league baseball stadium. Somewhere in America at this very moment, a dad is already standing in front of a grill wearing socks and declaring, "This is living." And honestly, I kind of love it. There's something deeply hopeful about the way human beings approach summer and the change of seasons. Summer always feels like possibility, like freedom. Like maybe this will finally be the year we relax more, stress less, reconnect with people, spend time outside, learn to garden, and somehow become the idealized version of ourselves we imagined back in February while scraping off ice off of our windshields or shoveling snow off of our walks. But then, somewhere around July, the heat index hits surface of Mercury, atmosphere of the sun. Everyone's sticky, everyone's sunburned, and suddenly nobody wants to do any of the things that they swore they were been waiting all winter to do. And this is why I find the Mark Twain observation about summer so poignant. Twain said, "Summer is the time when it's too hot to do the job that it was too cold to do last winter." And that might be one of the most accurate descriptions of human nature ever written. Twain is always good for that. But if you think about it, we're constantly imagining that somewhere just beyond the next season, the next schedule change, the next vacation, the next semester, the next promotion, the next horizon, or the next fresh start, everything will finally click into place. And sometimes it does. But sometimes we discover that human beings and that being human means carrying ourselves into every season. Our habits come with us. Our stress comes with us. Our unfinished projects come with us. But our hopes come with us too. And yet somehow every summer we try again. Anyway, honestly, there's something beautiful about that. Like Doctor Who used to speak about humans. And speaking of new seasons and new possibilities, this summer is shaping up to be an incredibly meaningful one for our collective work here as a community. Part of that work is making sure that everyone knows exactly where to find support, how to stay connected, and what steps to take as we move through this course together. So students, if you're taking this as a class, make sure that you're checking the Google Classroom at least weekly, as this is our home base for this course. That's where you're going to find your assignment details, due dates, links, instructions, and course information. I encourage everyone to spend some time with the introductory course materials. Those materials are there to help you get comfortable with the course, with Google Classroom, and understanding how everything, including this humanities stuff, works. You're going to find those tutorials on using Google Classroom, background readings on the purpose of humanities, guidance on how to think through cultural analysis, and other helpful course information. And for participation, I've been getting lots of questions. Students are expected to watch and respond to the weekly check-in video that I post each week. The first video of the semester was posted last week on May 12th, or on May 11th, actually, and it was episode 15 of season 4. This current episode, the one right now, is the second weekly video of the semester. So for the basic weekly participation requirement, you only need to watch the video and comment on the weekly video as assigned. You'll get the question a little later in this episode. Now, there are many other Nachos videos available, and you're absolutely welcome to explore them. I've highlighted many of the greatest hits and key ideas through the YouTube shorts, so those can be helpful and an easy way to get a feel for the larger project. However, those extra videos and shorts are not required for participation credit. They're there if you're interested, curious, and want to go deeper. Students should also plan to watch Crip Camp, which is available on YouTube. The midterm exam will focus on that film, so you'll need to view it carefully before completing the exam. In short, Google Classroom will guide you through what to watch, what to read, what to complete, and when everything is due. And yes, there's a midterm and a final, as well as the weekly participation. Those are your 3 assignments. And that's also why I want to keep reminding everyone that this course, this podcast, and this larger community are all connected. The weekly videos are not just boxes to check. They're part of a broader conversation about how we understand ourselves, how we understand society, and how we build more humane systems together. And that brings us back to the bigger work happening beyond this classroom and beyond this episode. This summer, that work is continuing in some really meaningful ways. Tomorrow, in fact, I'll be speaking at Yale, yes, that Yale, about PB&J, the predictability, balance, and joy theory, and how that framework can help us think more clearly about self-care, sustainability, design, and the kind of environments that allow people to thrive. Because whether we're talking about students finding their way through Google Classroom, people learning how to ask for support, or communities trying to reduce burnout, the same larger question keeps showing up. How do we make life more livable for real human beings? Because real self-care is not always bubble baths and scented calendars, or scented candles, or motivational calendar quotes, or quote calendars, sorry. And they're definitely not inspirational quotes over Instagram photos. Sometimes self-care is structure. Sometimes self-care is clarity. Sometimes self-care is rest. Sometimes self-care is saying the system is not working for me and I deserve support instead of shame. And this summer will also involve preparing for something that still feels surreal to say out loud: my upcoming American Cultural Lecture Tour in Central Asia as part of the Fulbright program. So over the coming months, I'm going to be preparing lectures and conversations focused on American culture, universal design, communication, neuro-affirming practices, and the way that human-centered systems can help people and communities flourish. And I think what excites me most is that these conversations are no longer isolated conversations happening in tiny corners of the internet or small conference rooms somewhere. People all over the world are increasingly asking the same questions. How do we create healthier systems? How do we reduce burnout? How do we increase buy-in? How do we make schools, workplaces, and communities more humane? How do we design spaces where more people can belong? And that matters because it reminds us that this work is bigger than any one person, any one podcast, or any one conference or lecture. It's a growing recognition that human beings were never meant to thrive under constant exhaustion, confusion, disconnection, and pressure. And maybe that's one of the real opportunities summer gives us. A chance to reconnect with what actually matters before the noise of the world convinces us otherwise. And speaking of reconnecting with joy, community, and the things that help us feel human again, that actually brings us to something really fun that we're doing this summer through Humanities 101 Foundation. Because amid all of the serious conversations about burnout, systems, self-care, and building healthier lives, it's also important to remember that human beings need music, We need laughter. We need shared experience. We need those moments where thousands of people sing the same song at the top of their lungs and forget about the stress of the world for a couple of hours. So this summer, we're launching our summer concert ticket giveaway to help more people get out, make memories, reconnect with friends and family, and maybe even have the kind of summer night they remember for years from now. So here's how the giveaway works, Nacho Knots. Thanks to the generosity of one of our longtime supporters, the Humanities 101 Foundation concert giveaway is giving members of our community the chance to win 2 lawn tickets to a live summer concert event of their choosing through a random drawing giveaway. That means whether you're hoping to spend a night at Pine Knob Music Theater singing under the stars, reconnecting with friends, or just escaping the stress of everyday life for a few hours, this is our way of helping create a little more joy and community this summer. Maybe that means Luke Bryant, bringing the summer party energy, Brooks and Dunn, delivering country nostalgia, Lil Wayne, turning lawn into one giant sing-along, and even Machine Gun Kelly bringing hometown Michigan energy to the stage. And honestly, that's a part of what this is really about. This whole project, community, memory, shared experience, humanity. The kind of nights that remind us that life is supposed to include joy too. And entering is super simple. You share the giveaway or you share content about Humanities 101, this video, a short, whatever. You subscribe to the Humanities 101 YouTube channel, and you fill out an official entry form on the website. Winners are selected randomly from eligible entries. And what I love most about this is that it reflects the larger spirit of what we're building together here. We're not just building content. And we're not just building conversations. We're trying to build a community where people feel seen, connected, encouraged, and reminded that joy is not something you have to postpone until someday when life finally becomes less stressful. You deserve moments of joy now, too. So check out humanities101.org/giveaway for more information. There's also something about summer itself that helps many of us reconnect to joy in ways we sometimes forget during the colder, busier, heavier parts of the year. Maybe it's the longer evenings. Maybe it's sunlight hanging around later into the day. Maybe it's hearing music drift across a parking lot before a concert starts. Maybe it's cookouts, road trips, county fairs, fireworks, baseball games, sitting on porches, or just hearing crickets through an open window at night. Summer has this strange ability to briefly convince us that time is slower than it really is. And for a lot of people, especially people who spend most of the year stressed, overworked, masking, caregiving, surviving, or carrying enormous emotional weight, that matters more than we realize. Because joy is not just entertainment. Joy is restoration. Joy reminds the nervous system that life is not only deadlines and stress responses. Joy interrupts survival mode. Joy reconnects us to curiosity, spontaneity, creativity, and community. And honestly, I think many adults quietly lose touch with joy because somewhere along the line, we start treating it like a reward instead of a necessity. We tell ourselves, I'll rest later. I'll enjoy life after this semester, after this project, after this crisis, after things calm down. But human beings are not machines designed to run endlessly without replenishment. Sometimes healing looks profound and life-changing. And sometimes healing looks like laughing with friends on a blanket at a concert while somebody nearby burns a hot dog beyond recognition. Both count. And maybe that's the part of the wisdom that's hidden in our summers. It reminds us that joy is not frivolous. It's part of what keeps us human. But Nacho Nuts, here's where the conversation gets a little more complicated because joy matters. True. Joy restores us. Yes. Joy reconnects us. Joy helps us remember what are more than our responsibilities. But even the things we associate with feeling good are not always simple. A new study from the Oregon Health and Science University, working with researchers from Anhui University in China, looked at serotonin, that brain chemical many people associate with mood, happiness, and emotional regulation. And what they found is fascinating. Serotonin may help many people with depression and anxiety, especially through medications like SSRIs, but it also may play a role in worsening tinnitus, the persistent ringing or buzzing in the ears that can be deeply distressing for many people. Using light-based brain stimulation in mice, the researchers identified a serotonin-related circuit that connects directly to the auditory system. When they activated that circuit, the mice showed behaviors associated with tinnitus. When they turned that circuit down, those tinnitus-like behaviors improved. And I think that this, even though it's again about mice, is a larger, powerful reminder for our NACHOS conversations. The brain is not a vending machine where you put in more serotonin and automatically get more happiness. Human beings are systems, delicate systems. So context matters. Balance matters. Individual difference matters. And that doesn't mean that serotonin is bad. It doesn't mean antidepressants are bad. It doesn't mean that anybody should stop or change medication without their prescribing clinician. What it means is that even helpful things can have complicated effects depending on the person, the body, the brain, and the situation. And that connects beautifully to the neuro-affirming work that we do, because neuroaffirmation is not about pretending every difference is easy, simple, or uncomplicated. It's about listening carefully to lived experience. It's about validating what people report about their own bodies, their own minds, and their own experiences. It's about moving away from the one-size-fits-all assumption and towards support that actually fits the person in front of us. So yes, joy matters. But sustainable joy is not about chasing constant stimulation, constant intensity, or constant feel-good chemistry. Sustainable joy is about paying attention to what actually nourishes us, what overwhelms us, what helps us regulate, and what starts to become too much. The same thing that helps one person feel grounded may make another feel flooded. Sometimes music is healing. Sometimes sound is painful. Sometimes a concert is liberation. Sometimes a loud room is too much. And none of that means that anyone is broken. It means we're human. And that brings us to a bigger question, Nacho Knots. What does it really mean to be human? Because we say that phrase all the time. Being human, human nature, the human story, our shared humanity. But sometimes we talk about humanity like it's a straight line. Like history was always marching towards us. Like evolution was a clean, tidy staircase from ancient ancestor to modern people. With our smartphones, iced coffee, and deeply unreasonable password requirements. But a new report from Arizona State University reminds us that the human story was never that simple. Researchers with the Lidi Guerrero research project in Ethiopia that studies ancient fossil teeth from between 2.6 and 2.8 million years ago. And those teeth suggest something remarkable. Early members of the Homo and previously unknown species of Australopithecus may have been living in the same region at the same time. In other words, human evolution was not one neat ladder. It was more like a crowded family reunion where nobody brought name tags. Multiple human relatives, different branches of the hominin family tree. And they may have shared the same landscape, adapted to the same changing environments, and possibly competed for some of the same resources. And I love this because it challenges one of the oldest myths we carry about humanity. the myth of the single correct path. There was never just one way to be an early human. There was never just one way to adapt. There was never just one version of intelligence or survival, movement, diet, problem solving, or belonging. The researchers dated the fossils by studying volcanic ash deposited in Ethiopia's Afar region. Those layers of ash helped them place the fossils in time and reconstruct the ancient environments around them. What is now a rugged Badlands landscape may have once included rivers, shallow lakes, and greener habitats where different hominin species cross paths. And that matters for our larger NACHOS conversation. Because when we ask what it means to be human, the answer is not sameness. Humanity has always been variation, adaptation, experimentation, difference, fragility, creativity, uncertainty, survival in changing conditions. The story of humanity is not a story of one perfect design winning because it was superior in every way. It's a story of bodies and brains responding to environments. It's a story of many possibilities, many branches, and many forms of life trying to make it through. And that connects directly to what we talk about here, because so much of modern society still acts like there is one correct way to think, one correct way to communicate, one correct way to learn, one correct way to work, one correct way to socialize, one correct way to be successful, and one correct way to be normal. But if human origin teaches us anything, it teaches us that humanity has never been one thing. We are not a straight line. We are a branching tree, a neural network. And that means difference is not a flaw in the human story. Difference is the human story. And if humanity is a story of variation, adaptation, and bodies responding to changing conditions, then this next study gives us another way to think about care across the lifespan. Because being human does not stop at origin stories. Being human also means aging, changing, needing support, trying to preserve memory, mobility, dignity, independence, and connection for as long as we can. A new study from Mass General Brigham looked at whether taking a daily multivitamin might help slow biological aging in older adults. This came out of the large Cosmos clinical trial, which stands for the COCO Supplement and Multivitamin Outcome Study. And here's the interesting part. Researchers studied blood samples from 958 healthy older adults with an average age of about 70. They looked at something called epigenetic clocks, which are DNA-based measures that estimate how quickly the body is aging at the cellular level. After 2 years, participants who took a daily multivitamin showed slower biological aging across several of those measures. The overall effect was roughly equal to about 4 fewer months of biological aging over the 2-year study period. Now, as always with these things, we want to be careful here. This does not mean that a multivitamin is a magic fountain of youth. It does not mean everybody should run to the store and assume one pill will erase stress, poor sleep, food insecurity, loneliness, environmental strain, or lack of health care. And it certainly does not replace medical advice from a clinician who knows your body and your medications. But it does suggest something meaningful. Small, accessible supports may matter. And that connects beautifully to our conversations about universal design and micro-accommodation. Because so often when we talk about health, aging, learning, disability, or well-being, we imagine interventions have to be dramatic or expensive or grand to be worthwhile. We imagine transformation has to arrive like a thunderclap. But sometimes support is smaller than that. Sometimes support is clearer instruction, a quieter room, a predictable schedule, a daily nutrient, a reminder system, a chair in the back. a little more time, a little less shame, a little more access. The body, like the brain, is constantly responding to its environment. Aging is not just a number on a birthday card. It's a relationship between biology, stress, nutrition, movement, rest, community, healthcare, and the conditions people are living under every day. And I think that's the deeper lesson here. Human beings are not fixed machines. We're living biological systems. We are shaped over time by what we are given, what we are denied, what we endure, and what helps us recover. So when we talk about care, we're not just talking about one dramatic cure. We're talking about the accumulation of supports that make life more livable. And whether we're talking about older adults, neurodivergent students, burned out caregivers, disabled workers, or anyone trying to make it through a hard season, that truth matters. Small supports are still supports. And sometimes small supports offered consistently and without shame can help people hold on to more life. And that idea, that small supports can matter, leads us right into another study that speaks directly to something many of us know in our bones. Anxiety is not just worrying too much. It's not a character flaw. It's not a lack of gratitude. It's not a weakness. And it definitely isn't somebody being dramatic. A new study from UC Davis looked at brain chemistry in people with anxiety disorder and found something really interesting. Researchers reviewed data from 25 previous studies involving more than 700 people. They were looking at neurometabolites, which are chemicals involved in how the brain functions and uses energy. And one signal stood out: choline. Choline is an essential nutrient involved in memory, mood regulation, cell structure, and nerve signaling. In this analysis, people with anxiety disorders had about 8% lower levels of choline in their brain compared with people without anxiety disorders. The clearest difference appeared in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain involved in decision-making and emotional regulation, behavior, and helping us decide whether something is actually dangerous or just feels dangerous. Now listen, whether it's actually dangerous or feels dangerous. And that matters because so many people with anxiety spend their lives being told just to calm down, just to take it easy, as if the body has a magical calm down button hidden somewhere behind the left ear or the right knee, or maybe it's in between the toes. But anxiety is not simply a thought problem. It's a body problem, a brain problem, a nervous system problem, a lived environment problem. And sometimes, as this study suggests, it may even be a nutrient-related brain chemistry problem that we're only beginning now to understand. So we got to be careful with this one too. The study does not prove that these levels in the brain, high or low, cause anxiety. It doesn't prove that taking choline supplements will treat anxiety. And researchers specifically caution that people should not self-medicate with excessive supplements. More research is needed before anyone can say anything about whether changing intake can improve anxiety symptoms. But what it does offer is another reminder that mental health is embodied. The mind is not floating somewhere above the body like a motivational poster with Wi-Fi. The mind lives in the body. It lives in sleep. It lives in food. It lives in stress hormones, in sensory input. It lives in trauma history. It lives in social support. It lives in access to care. It lives in whether your day is predictable or chaotic, nourishing or draining, connected or isolated. And that's incredibly important for our conversation because when people struggle, especially neurodivergent people, anxious people, disabled people, students, caregivers, and people living under chronic stress, we have to resist the urge to reduce their struggle to attitude, to will. Sometimes what looks like overreacting is a nervous system working overtime. Sometimes what looks like avoidance is a brain trying to reduce threat. Sometimes what looks like not coping well or not handling the situation appropriately is a person whose body has been carrying too much for too long without enough support. And again, this does not mean nutrition solves everything. It doesn't. But it does mean support has to be whole person support. Medication can matter, but food access can matter. Rest can matter. Movement can matter. Community can matter. Clear expectations can matter. Sensory safety can matter. And yes, sometimes ordinary nutrients matter too. That's the deeper lesson. Human beings are not machines that need better discipline. We're living systems that need care. And when we understand that, when we stop asking, what is wrong with this person? And start asking a better question like, what support is missing? We start to realize that sometimes the missing support is not heroic. It's not expensive. Sometimes it doesn't require an identity overhaul, a complete life reset, or becoming some sort of person who owns 17 matching containers of overnight oats. Sometimes the missing support is a few minutes of movement that helps the body remember it's alive. And that reminder comes from a new article and a study from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology that highlights research suggesting that 30 minutes of high-intensity exercise per week produces meaningful health benefits. Now listen, 30 minutes per week, not 30 minutes every day, not 2 hours at the gym while being emotionally bullied by a treadmill. 30 minutes per week, broken into small bursts of effort that get you noticeably out of breath. Running up the stairs, playing a game, dancing to a song. And I want to pause there because this is where the NACHOS lens matters. For a lot of people, especially burned out people, neurodivergent, anxious, caregivers, students, chronically stressed, traditional exercise advice can feel like one more impossible demand. Work out 5 days a week, get 10,000 steps, join a gym, wake up earlier, drink this juice, be more disciplined. And suddenly something that could support your body becomes another reason to feel like you are failing. But this research points to something more gentler and more realistic. Intensity may matter more than duration. Researchers at NTNU, they argue that short, intensive bursts of activity can improve cardiovascular fitness, which is strongly connected to long-term health. That might mean a brisk walk where you're breathing hard enough that you can still speak in short sentences, but not comfortably enough to sing a full verse of Bohemian Rhapsody. It might mean short intervals. It might mean climbing stairs. It might mean dancing in the kitchen until the dog looks concerned. The point is not perfection. The point is possibility. And again, we have to be careful. This is not a shame stick. This is not a commandment. This is not me saying everybody's body can or should do high intensity exercise in the same way. People have disabilities, pain conditions, heart conditions, mobility differences, fatigue, trauma, medication effects, and all kind of real body-based constraints. Any new exercise plan should fit when needed with your plan that you have discussed with your caretakers and your clinicians. But the deeper lesson here is powerful. Support doesn't always have to be huge to be meaningful. A few minutes can matter. Small bursts can matter. A realistic goal can matter. A body-friendly adaptation can matter. A version that fits your actual life can matter. And that connects directly to our larger conversations about universal design and self-care. Because the question is not, how do we force everyone into the same wellness routine? The better question is, how do we create flexible paths towards regulation, strength, health, and joy? For one person, like me, that may be a walk. For another, it might be chair movement. For another, swimming. For another, long distance running. For another, dancing or pacing. For another, it might be stretching between tasks or simply starting with breath and balance. The body doesn't need shame to move. The body needs invitation. It needs safety. It needs adaptation. And most of all, it needs encouragement. And a chance to experience movement as care instead of punishment. So maybe one answer to what support is missing is this: not more pressure, more accessible ways back into our bodies. And that's the key, Nacho Knots. Movement may be a part of what is missing, but it may not be. For some people, the missing support might be exercise. For someone else, the missing support might be less exercise because their body is exhausted, inflamed, injured, depleted, or quietly begging for recovery. For some people, the missing support might be more sleep. For someone else, it might be less time in bed and more daylight structure in gentle movement to help reset the rhythm of their day. For some people, the missing support might be more food, more consistent meals, more nourishment, more protein, more water, more permission to eat without guilt. And for someone else, it might be less of something that has been making their body feel sluggish, overstimulated, uncomfortable, and disconnected. And this is where we have to be very, very safe and careful with this wellness culture crap. Because wellness culture loves universal answers. Drink this, take that, wake up at 5 a.m., cut this out, add this supplement, do this workout, follow this routine, buy this journal, become this person. But human beings are not identical machines with the same missing parts. We're living systems shaped by bodies, brains, histories, environments, relationships, responsibilities, stress, grief, joy, access, money, time, trauma, disability, culture, and care. So the question is not, what is the one thing everyone needs? The better question is, what is my body, my brain, and my actual life trying to tell me? And sometimes the answer is not obvious. Sometimes we think we need more discipline when we actually need more rest. Sometimes we think we need more productivity when we actually need more connection. Sometimes we think we need to push harder when we actually need to recover. Sometimes we think we need to relax when what we really need is stimulation, novelty, movement, sunlight, or a reason. Yes, just an excuse to leave the house. Sometimes we think we are falling when we're actually under-supported. And that's such an important distinction, because try harder is not always care. Sometimes care is trying differently. Sometimes care is doing less. Sometimes care is doing more. Sometimes care is asking for help. Sometimes care is changing the environment. Sometimes care is eating lunch before 4 p.m. Sometimes care is turning off the phone. Sometimes care is answering that text, going to that concert, staying home from that concert and not shaming yourself for needing quiet. The wisdom is not in following one perfect formula. The wisdom is in learning to listen, not the loud panic voice of shame, not the algorithm, not the influencer who has somehow monetized drinking water from a glass jar at sunrise, but the quieter signals, the headache, the shoulder pain, the irritability, the fog, the dread, the restlessness, the loneliness, the numbness, the sudden tears, the tiny spark of interest when something actually feels good, those signals are information. They're not moral failures. And maybe that's one of the most compassionate things we can practice this summer. Curiosity without punishment. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? We might ask, what is missing? And then gently, we can experiment. More movement, less movement. More sleep, less sleep. More food, different food. More structure, less pressure. More sunlight, less noise. More people, more solitude. More joy, more quiet. There may not be, and there probably, definitely will not be one answer. But there can be the next kind step. There's always a next kind step. And maybe that is a good place for us to begin wrapping up things together here, Nacho Knots. Because in a funny way, all of these stories have been circling the same campfire. We started with summer, Memorial Day weekend, and the very human tendency to imagine what the next season will magically become the place where everything finally gets easier. We laughed with Mark Twain about the jobs that were too cold to do in the winter and somehow now too hot to do in the summer. But underneath the joke was something real. Human beings are always living inside conditions. Temperature matters, timing matters, energy and environment matters. Then we moved into joy, concerts, community, and the reminder that we're not here just to survive our calendar. We're here to live, to connect, to laugh, to sing too loudly with strangers, and to remember that joy is not a prize we earn after burnout. Joy is part of what keeps us human. And then the science complicated that in the best of ways. Serotonin reminded us that even feel-good chemistry is not simple. Human evolution reminded us that humanity has never been one straight line. The multivitamin aging study reminded us that small supports can matter. The choline and anxiety study reminded us that mental health is embodied. And the exercise study reminded us that sometimes a little movement can help, but not because one answer fits everybody. So, today has been really about the beautiful, messy truth of being human. We are not machines, we are not moral failures, and we are not problems to be optimized. We are living systems, and living systems need care. They need context, they need support, flexibility, recovery, connection, and joy. So before we go, Nacho Knots, I want to give the Humanities 101 students their participation question for the week. In today's episode, we talked about summer, joy, serotonin, human evolution, anxiety, aging, exercise, and the larger question of what support might be missing in our lives. So here's your question. What is one small support, adjustment, or source of joy that might help you feel more balanced this summer? It could be more rest, more movement, more time with friends, more quiet, more structure, less pressure, better food, more sunlight, a concert, a walk, a new hobby, or simply giving yourself permission to slow down. Remember, there is no perfect answer. I just want you to connect the episode to your own life in a thoughtful way. And for everyone listening, watching, if this episode gave you something to think about, please like, follow, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Those small actions really do help Nachos and the Humanities 101 Foundation reach more people with neuro-affirming conversations about care, community, self-worth, disability, education, and the deeply human work of building better systems. And one more reminder, our summer concert ticket giveaway is happening now. You can find the entry form and full details on the Humanities 101 Foundation website, humanities101.org/giveaway, all one word. Share the giveaway, subscribe to the Humanities 101 channel, and fill out the form for your chance to win tickets to one of this summer's shows. Because yes, we talk about systems, we talk about science, about burnout, access, and care, but we also believe joy belongs here too. And now, Nacho Knots, before we land this plane gently and taxi into the runway, let's move into our weekly affirmations, because after a conversation like this about summer, joy, aging, evolution, chemistry, movement, and the question of what supports might be missing, I think we need a moment to let the lessons settle somewhere deeper than our thinking brain. Today reminded us that being human is not about having everything figured out. It's not about finding the perfect routine, the perfect body, the perfect brain, the perfect schedule, or the perfect version of summer, where we magically become well-rested, emotionally regulated, hydrated, productive, beautiful, socially fulfilled, and somehow not sticky. Being human is messier than that. It means we adapt, we change. We need different things at different times. We carry histories in our bodies. We respond to environments. We sometimes need more. We sometimes need less. We sometimes need movement. We sometimes need stillness. We sometimes need people, and at other times we need quiet. And sometimes we need to stop treating our needs like failures and start treating them like information. So as we move into this week and as summer begins to open its noisy, sunny, mosquito-filled arms, let's take a moment to speak kindly to ourselves. Not because everything is easy, but because we're worthy of care in the middle of everything that is not. So as we close today, Nacho Knots, I hope you carry this with you. You are not a machine. You are not a productivity unit. You are not a problem to be fixed, and you are not failing because your needs change from season to season. You are a living, breathing, changing human being, and human beings need context. We need care. We need rhythm. We need rest. We need connection. We need room to adapt. And yes, we need joy. So as summer begins, may you give yourself permission to ask better questions. Not, why can't I do anything? But what support might help? Not, what is wrong with me? But what is my body or brain trying to tell me? Not, how do I become perfect? But what is the next kind step? Because the goal is not to become a flawless version of yourself. The goal is to become a more supported version of yourself, a more whole version of yourself, a more you version of yourself. So Nacho Knots, as always, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too much. You are not alone. Your needs are not burdens. Your joy is not frivolous. Your rest is not laziness. Your differences are not defects. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to need support. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to begin again. So until next time, keep showing up for yourself and for each other with curiosity, compassion, and care. This has been Nachos, the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. I'm Dr. Dutch, reminding you that you are worthy of predictability, balance, joy, and belonging. Take care of yourself, Nacho Knots. Take care of each other. And remember, you are already enough, exactly as you are.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week. The views and opinions expressed in this video are solely those of the creator and do not reflect the views of any institution, employer, or affiliated organization.